What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly Sports History for September 15th, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Sunday edition, a non-Eagles Sunday edition of the podcast. Let's get a little housekeeping out of the way. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont, Twitter and TikTok, at Philly Jimbo on Instagram. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. Spread the word, continuing to grow this thing. Big things on the horizon. Thank you, and just continue to spread the word and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let's recap yesterday's question of the day. I asked you which former Eagles legend is most deserving of a Hall of Fame spot. Surprisingly, 67% of you said Bill Bergey. Seth Joyner got 33%. The others were split between Jaworski and Quick. As I mentioned yesterday, to me, it's Seth Joyner. It's a no-brainer. But a lot of you think it's Bill Bergey. Thank you, as always, for participating in the question of the day. There'll be another one later in the show. But the number to get into the Back to the Future voice and text line is 267-495-8531. 267-495-8531. All right, what a Phil's game. And they seem to be doing this a lot, which I feel is a good sign. They fell out, obviously not falling behind early, but fell behind 4-0, battled back. Bryce finally got a home run. In fact, he hit 2 of them. And just the fight that this team is showing, I said it either last week or the week before, you can never count them out, which getting that mindset, that mentality rolling here in September, heading into the postseason, is certainly what we need. The bullpen was huge down the stretch. Cal Stevenson was clutch both at bat and in the field. It was what an amazing catch to rob that home run. It really changed and saved the game there. Tawan Walker actually pitched well out of the bullpen, 3 scoreless innings. In his post-game conference, he was saying that his goal is to try to get a spot on the postseason roster. No, thank you. But that's okay. But this is the team that I want to see here late in the season, heading into the end of September, into the postseason. Team that you can never count out. They're hitting fairly decent, which will take. Hopefully, Bohm and Sosa will be back soon. But, guys like Cal Stevenson and Cody Clemens are really fighting. Weston Wilson battling to be considered for playoff spots on the roster, which is great. So they evened up the series, though, with the Mets. They look for the series win this afternoon with sorry, I can't talk. I'm like, with Christopher Sanchez on the mound today. The magic number now to win the division is 7 games. They have an 8-game lead over both the Mets and the Braves currently. 3 games over Milwaukee and 2 over the Dodgers for that top seed. And that don't look now, but the magic number to clinch a playoff spot is 5. But to get the 2 seed is down to 11. So we're almost in single digits to be guaranteed that bye, which is huge. But that leads us to today's question of the day. Do you have a preference of which team the Phillies play in the postseason? I don't. I just really want to get in. You're going to have to face these teams one way or the other. Obviously, you want it to be an easier path, but at the end of the day, the teams that get in are good teams, usually for the most part. But let me know your thoughts. 267-495-8531. That'll get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. Also, you can hit me up on any of the social media. But let me know, do you have a preference on who the Phillies play? And let me know which team you'd rather play or which team you hope to avoid. Like I said, nobody really, obviously I'd want to try to avoid the Diamondbacks if at all possible. But really, the way my mindset works, I would love to get the revenge on the Diamondbacks as well. So to me, it's all about how well this team plays. It's not necessarily the opponent. Nobody can go, I don't feel, go toe-to-toe with the Phillies in a 7-game series if they're hitting on all cylinders. That is the key. I think the biggest toughest opponent for the Phillies in the postseason is going to be themselves. But let me know your thoughts. Do you have a preference on who they play? 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. Check out my boys over at the Clashing Conferences. Get ready for an NFL Sunday with the football version with the OGs of the NFC East, or get ready for postseason baseball with the baseball guys. That's available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. Then go to Philly Goat, do some shopping. I told you about the Schwarber shirt where it has the donkey, the Republican, and the Fanatic with the check next to the Fanatic. Already ordered it. It's on the way. Go check out the other stuff they have. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com. Promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off of your order. All right, the Union lost last night 3-1 to Miami. Messi had 2 goals because, of course, he did. The Union are now 3 points out of the final wild card spot with 6 games left. It's an uphill battle, but crazier things have happened. So we will continue to keep an eye on them. But there should be a lot of changes to this roster over the offseason. And then Mishkov did not play for the Flyers last night, so we don't have any Mishkov updates. But training camp is opening up soon. Next week, they get some preseason games underway. So I'm excited to see him against real NHL talent, not just the rookies. A.J. Brown showed up on the injury report with hamstring tightness. He's questionable for Monday night. Not a lot of information was made available. It's something that kind of popped up. I don't necessarily if I had to bet, I'd say he plays, but that could be a huge loss. We'll see. I still think they should be okay, but we'll break that game down tomorrow. But not a good sign when he just randomly pops up. He popped up and practiced limited the other day. Did not practice at all. Likely, I'm hoping this is just more of a precautionary thing, but kind of not the guy you want to have on the injury report. We'll break down the game tomorrow, give you the keys to the game. Like I mentioned before, any local car dealership or Key Bank, if you want to sponsor this, that's perfectly fine too. Jason Kelsey, Garage Beer, more than willing to have you be the sponsor for the keys to the game tomorrow. But who are we rooting for today? Obviously, we're rooting for the Saints over the Cowboys, even though I did pick, and I'm probably jinxing it by even putting this out there in the universe, I did pick the Cowboys as a one of my picks in one of my survivor pools, so I will gladly take that L if that is the case. Giants and Washington are playing each other, short of rooting for the stadium to just magically disappear. I guess we have to root for the Giants since Washington likely is going to be better. For me, I'd rather it be a 0-0 tie. So, I mean, take who you want for there. Rooting for the Colts over the Packers, Patriots over the Seahawks, and the Cardinals-Rams is another one of those ones. Everybody's high on the Rams, but I almost feel like the Cardinals could be one of those sneaky teams. So take your pick on that one. I mean, I guess in the big picture, as far as what the predictions are, we should root for the Cardinals to beat the Rams. But the Cardinals always just, and going back to even in the late 80s, early 90s, Cardinals always seem to beat the Eagles. So they're up there in my top 10 of most hated teams. So like I said, take your pick on that. But that's kind of who we're rooting for. Never too early to start getting some of these tiebreakers and things like that lined up. But if I lose the survivor pick with the Cowboys, so be it. All right, today, speaking of the Cowboys, we're going to go back to 1997. And on this day in 1997, the Eagles lost to the Cowboys 21-20 on Monday Night Football. And this was an interesting game that I remember very, very well. Eagles came in as 9-point underdogs. They had just beat the defending champion Packers the week before. If you remember, we talked back in August. They opened the season with a ridiculous, mistake-filled loss to the Giants. So they're 1-1 going into this game, looking to cement themselves as a legitimate team in 1997. Jumped out to an early 17-3 lead. This game was down in Dallas. They actually led 20-15 late in the fourth quarter until Troy Aikman hit Anthony Miller with a 14-yard touchdown with about 5.5 minutes left. And there was just mistakes galore on that drive throughout the game. Much like the Giants game, they just were making ridiculous, dumb mistakes. However, though, Ty Detmer did lead them down the field to come try to attempt a game-winning field goal, got them in field goal range, set up a chip shot Chris Boniol field goal, the former Cowboy making his first return to Dallas in this game. And I remember I was a freshman at Temple. It was during the rush period for my fraternity, and I had already received a bid, so I knew I was going to pledge. And there was one of the older brothers was a huge Cowboys fans. If any of you out there are fraternity brothers of mine, you might remember Albin. And I remember talking a lot of trash back and forth with him throughout the game. And really was just like in my glory, because here we are. The Eagles are going to beat the Cowboys. No way Chris Boniol is going to miss this field goal. And as fate would have it, there were 4 seconds left. I think it was Steve Everett was the Eagles center at the time. Steve Everett snapped the ball to Tommy Hutton, who bobbled it. And instead of Boniol just trying to kick it, it was a very short field goal. He could have just attempted to kick it. Tommy Hutton pulled it up, ran with it, got tackled by Dion, and I took the L 21-20 after all of the trash I had talked. And if you know anything about pledging in a fraternity, a lot of those guys, once the whole pledge program started, they did not forget the trash I was talking in that game, and we'll leave it at that. So Albin definitely got his revenge on me twice. And like I said, we'll leave it at that. But that loss kind of set the tone then for the rest of the season. They went 6-9-1. We talked about this. It was the Bobby Hoyen year. And I just still feel like if you win that game and you go 2-1 after beating the Packers and Cowboys in back-to-back weeks, all of a sudden the whole mindset changes. And I feel like this is one of those, I mentioned during the 2-year anniversary show, that I was writing a book, The What Ifs of Philly Sports. This is one of those not as big what if moments, but had that field goal gone in, I feel it would have changed the course of that season. And then this ended up being the second to last season of Ray Rhodes' tenure as head coach. Who knows? It may have worked out differently for Ray, which means we don't get Andy, we don't get Donovan, and the whole course of history could have changed, all because Tommy Hutton bobbled that field goal. And who knows? Maybe Albin and I would have been best friends had I not talked so much trash and Tommy Hutton let me down. But on this day, back in 1997, Eagles lost to the Cowboys 21-20 on Monday Night Football when Tommy Hutton bobbled a snap on what would have been a chip shot Chris Boniol field goal to win the game for the Eagles down in Dallas, changing the entire course of Eagles history that season. And sure, that's a little bit of hyperbole, but it certainly, I think, changed the course of that season, because being 2-1 after beating the defending champs and the Cowboys, who at the time were kind of on the downward trajectory, but still were a pretty solid NFC team, completely would have changed the outlook of that season. But that happened on this day in 1997. Finally today, our Philly Sports Villains. It's going to be a short, quick one today. Relatively recent one. Jonathon Gannon is today's Philly Sports Villain. And you want to talk about a punchable face. Jonathon Gannon might be top 10 punchable face in all-time Philly sports. I mean, he just looks like the guy, like, you just want to punch him. And after I tell you what he did and why he's on the villain list, you're going to want to punch him even more. Defensive coordinator in 21 and 22. And the simple reason he's a villain is because he interviewed for the Cardinals head coaching job. Another reason why I hate the Cardinals, by the way. The week between the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, was he distracted leading up to the Super Bowl? I mean, you're interviewing for a head coaching job. Yeah, you're going to be distracted somewhat. I mean, I've interviewed for jobs after work, and like all throughout the day, I'm not focused on what my job is. I'm focused on preparing for the interview. So you're damn right he was distracted going to the Super Bowl. The Eagles felt he was distracted going to the Super Bowl. And if you look at the Super Bowl, he certainly was distracted. I mean, defensively, they played well, but they made zero adjustments. And yes, it was Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And Andy Reid is, for all of his sort of warts that he had in Philly, he did make the adjustments once he got to Kansas City. A lot of times he didn't really do much in Philly. We were like, Andy, he was stubborn. You got to adjust. To his credit, he adjusted in the Super Bowl. Jonathon Gannon did not, and I question whether he was even mentally there. Which, to me, the NFL needs to change it. You should not be able. No head coaches should be able to be hired, or sure, you can fire them. But, I mean, it might make it easier if you don't, no coaching, just free agency. Make it after the Super Bowl, and then you can do what you want, because then you have incidents like this. He ended up leaving and left us with Sean Desai last year, and we saw how that season. So the legacy of Jonathon Gannon being a villain certainly showed and projected itself into last season as well during that collapse. So I don't know. And I mean, the NFL acknowledged that there was tampering with the Cardinals as well, because they ended up awarding the Eagles some picks and exchanging with the Cardinals and everything. Even though they tried to make it hush-hush during that next draft, it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous that this dude cost us the Super Bowl. Because if the NFL is acknowledging that something was wrong, the Eagles are basically saying, yeah, he was distracted. They were caught off guard with this. We saw what happened in the Super Bowl. You're not going to sit here and tell me that this dude was not distracted somewhat. He was not 100% invested in winning that Super Bowl for the Eagles. He was on to Kyler Murray and figuring out what he's going to do in Arizona. So that is why Jonathon Gannon and his punchable face are today's Philly Sports Villain. I know some people might be like, it was this, it was that. But if you look at what the Chiefs did in the second half of that Super Bowl, Jonathon Gannon was distracted. And he should have just left. Howie Roseman should have just left him in Arizona and said, figure it out, find your own way back, and then punch him in the face. But Jonathon Gannon is today's Philly Sports Villain. On this day in 1997, Eagles lost to the Cowboys 21-20 in Dallas on Monday Night Football when Tommy Hutton bobbled the snap on what should have been a chip shot Chris Boniol field goal, beating his former team. Talked a lot of trash on that one and lived to regret it. And again, we'll leave it at that. No Eagles game today. We'll get ready, break it down with the keys to the game tomorrow. We're 1-0 on our bet so far, so we will look to go 2-0 tomorrow with our bet. I feel like I have a good read on this game right now, despite AJ being on the injury report, but we'll monitor that too. Hopefully we can get some clarity on that today. Phil's look to take the series against the Mets, 1:30 today. Hopefully Sanchez just continues to be dominant, but you can never count this team out. So let's get it, whittle that magic number down. And if the Dodgers beat the Braves, that magic number could be 5 heading into Milwaukee. So lots to root for, lots to watch today. It's going to be another beautiful day, so get out and enjoy. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for September 15th, 2024. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Sunday, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.